All right. All right. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. We're back on Monday afternoon with Lightworkers Secret to Success. Unfortunately, we don't have Pamela or Marta joining us today, but they should be back next week. So we have Adam and Rebecca, and today we have the honor of interviewing Ashley May. So we're so excited to have her, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what she's been up to and her passions before I let her tell us all about herself. Hold on, guys, my computer is not being nice to me. Hold on a second. All right, there we go. All right, so like I said before, we have the pleasure of interviewing Ashley May. She's a trained counseling therapist and energetic intuitive healer, and her healing sessions are called the Hidden Emotion Unconscious Shadow Healing. We're going to want to know more about that, Ashley, for sure. So Ashley's main gift is Clairsentience, which is an automatic knowing, so emotionally. She's also Claircognizant, Clairaudience, and an Empath, and trained counseling therapist who has a practice many therapeutic models. So I'm sure you will tell us more about that. So interesting, Ashley can feel people's emotions very strongly while she's talking to them and talking to them in their sessions. So she can start thinking about them or seeing a picture of them, and you can actually physically feel pain in your body when other people write through the motions. I think I get a lot of that as well, and I just never had any words to describe it. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know how to
copy that.
I know, like, I don't know. This is just how it feels. But yeah, so well, tell us a little bit more, because it's always so fascinating. So we're all healers here, and so we just love to put other healers in the spotlight. And so we're just so happy you're here to share with us today.
I'm so happy to. And Amanda, I wanted to thank you because, you put a lot of posts and light out into the world, and you are definitely one of my lighthouses. So as I said, your posts really resonate with me on a regular basis. And so I felt like when you reached out to ask me about doing this, that we were very much in alignment. So that was very exciting to me. So I'm extremely grateful. So I am a trained counseling therapist, but I kind of live in two different worlds. So I do practice some therapeutic skills and different things in our 3D world. But then I also am able to access, multi-dimensional facets. And so I'm a bit of a hybrid between your typical trained counseling therapist and an intuitive healer, which means I'm using a lot of best practices that I've learned. I have 4.5 university degrees, and so I did learn a lot through that program, but my clients have really been my major teachers, right? Through that process. And intuitive skills come into play when I'm with somebody. As you said, I can feel into what they're feeling. I can feel into the energy of that. And funnily enough, when I'm working with trauma and doing regression work and childhood wounds and all of those things, I can pull up specific dates, origin, ages, years, for that person to be able to access the unconscious memory. So, a lot of modality that's popular out there to do this type of work is hypnotherapy, but I don't actually have to put somebody under. So they're very much in their conscious awareness, and we're bringing that memory forward. And we're bringing that memory forward, not to make it more traumatic for somebody or not to re-traumatize. We're bringing that forward essentially so that person can have more awareness around it. And the thing that I want people to really understand is that bringing awareness to your past and how you cope with trauma is creating an ability to cope with that, to manage it, so that when that trigger or when that reaction comes up, you're able to look at it and say, I know what that is, and I'm not going to allow it to go any deeper. So my sessions often pull up emotions that go into a trigger, a behavior, and a resulting emotion. So what happens is we do those regressions, and we conceptualize that in a chain. And that chain becomes something that you can see when you're having that trigger. it goes into your behavior, which is what you do when you're triggered. And then following that, there's a primary emotion and several secondary emotions that then manifest, right? And so what we're trying to do is pause at the trigger and be able to go, I know where that's coming from. I understand myself. I recognize that I'm uncomfortable, I'm triggered, I'm what have you. And what do I need to do to shift my energy, out of that process? And so when I do sessions with clients, we create all this awareness. Now, of course, this doesn't change just in the session, right? You're going to be still carrying that energy and repeating that. So what happens is I teach people the skills to do the release work themselves. So we do that session, and then that person gets an integration time. And I intuitively know what that integration time is. It could be weeks, it can be months. And we're not able to do any other appointments until that takes place. So during that integration time, that person fully conceptualizes and learns how to interrupt that trigger and not let it become a behavior and a resulting emotion. And so for that reason, you start to shift that energy, having all that awareness of self. And it really is about becoming one with your shadow, becoming one with those shameful parts of society that have maybe been pushed away and brought back. And you're saying to that part of yourself, I really love that part of myself because it's the willful, creative, expansive part of myself. We often look at shadows as something negative, but it's actually what drives us. And if we can harness it appropriately and sort of have that emotional regulation with it, then we can really do some spectacular, creative, fantastic things as the human creators that we are. Okay, that was a really long spiel.
That's okay, but I love it. I love it all, and I love the work that you're doing. So one of the things is for our viewers, I don't know if we've talked a lot about shadow work, and I know that's kind of like we all kind of know what it is, but can you kind of give your own definition for our viewers, like what the shadow work is and why is it so important to kind of tap into that, and incorporate that and kind of integrate it into who you are as a being?
Right. And so shadow is what it kind of like sounds like. It's the other version of yourself that and my little parrot is here. So he gets excited when I talk about this stuff.
Oh my God. I heard a bird. I love birds. I'm like, oh, little bird.
He gets very excited in the energy, especially when it's exciting energy. So but that's good. He's feeling, good things. So shadow work is essentially dealing with that other part of ourself. And as I, mentioned just briefly, it's the part of ourself that's often shamed by society. It's often told it's wrong. Your mom says, don't cry in public. Do not cry right now till we get home. And you hold that emotion so tight that it internally goes inside you, because our bodies are very intelligent. And so when we don't have a way to release that energy, it goes internally. And then, it can manifest as an issue that continually builds up in the body as energy. And we need a way to release that. And sometimes we've been building a repetitive stressor for many, many years. And that's kind of going back in the regressions. I'm trying to find that information. But the shadow part of yourself is definitely maybe the darker side of your personality. And we all have that. We all have that piece of ourselves. But as I said, once harnessed and loved and treated, with such kindness and acceptance and non-judgmental behavior, we can accept all parts of ourselves and really be whole. And when we're really whole, and other people are reacting around us, we can recognize that the things that they're reacting to are about themselves, and we're no longer blaming or shaming ourselves for the things that are arising in our daily lives, because we can see what's what not necessarily what has transpired, but we can see that that person is struggling, and we can have more love and understanding for them versus getting our guard up. That reminds me of the way my mom used to treat me. Or, the example I use sometimes is if you have a boss at work and that boss dumps a load of papers on your desk and says, get this done, never says thank you, never shows any appreciation. And say you had your mom doing that all your life while you were doing chores. And so every time your boss does that without giving any appreciation, you respond by going, oh, like, why is he such a jerk? And so you build up this emotion, this resentment, this, blame. And, the reality of that scenario is you're being paid to do a job. And your boss doesn't actually have to give you any validation and or things like that, but you're reacting from a prior event and a buildup of emotional needs that weren't met. And so when we can conceptualize that and we can find that, then when the boss puts those stack of papers, you're like, he's still kind of a jerk, but it doesn't bother me because I know this is my mommy issue. And you just kind of giggle about it, right? And it becomes it becomes almost humorous in a way because you're like, oh, I'm a funny human being with all these little quirks and little shadows and little, synchronicities, right? And the more you understand yourself, the more you love yourself. And that's the goal is, and as cliche as it sounds, people know that saying, you have to love yourself before you can love others. It is 100% true.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but we have to be able to accept ourselves 100% without judgment, to be able to do that for other people. And when we're able to do that for other people, we can lean into our feminine, more receiving side, and we can soften and, say, I get that person has some of their own struggles, and you can meet them where they're at without judgment, without, strong negative feelings towards them. And of course, I'm still a work in progress. I catch myself all the time, right? And I'm like, oh boy, like, what is that all about? And that's the piece right there. Doing this work is getting curious. It's saying to yourself, hey, I was just triggered, or I had a really weird reaction to this person. What is that all about?
Right.
Like getting curious, like what's going on. And I realize it is so much easier to avoid emotion. That's why many people on this planet are using drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever the case may be, to distract. I get it. It's super hard. And sometimes it gets harder before it gets easier, but I swear it gets so much easier and so much more beautiful. And you start to see life for what it is and people around for who they really are as, beings that are a product of their experience from birth until death, right? And we start to appreciate that journey that each of us are on, and the challenges and the lessons and we start to see even those negative interactions as a gift, right? And that's the key and I would argue that that's the gift to contentment and happiness, is to be able to see all of those things as gifts.
Yeah. What do you think, what's your favorite skill to teach a client?
My favorite skill to teach a client is how to heal themselves, because I am a trained counseling therapist, but I have an intention to heal as many people in this lifetime as I can. So if I can heal and teach people, oftentimes there's several layers of the onion, but by the time we get to that and we're in more recent events and that sort of thing, I'm hoping, to have people having the skills to do that themselves or even do it with other people. And that's what I think a good healer does. You want to get fired. It's the craziest job. When you get fired, know you've done your job, right?
Yeah.
It's the job you're always working to get fired from.
Which is an oxymoron in our 3D reality, right?
Right.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, let's open it up. Adam, do you have any questions for Ashley?
Geez, I don't know, you guys, I was just listening, and it's so interesting with everything that you're saying. And I love that. Even when I worked retail, one of the things when I worked retail was I wanted to train people. Maybe train's not the right word. I wanted to help people if they wanted to take over my job and
Right.
essentially fire me from my job. So I always wanted to find that replacement to always be replacing me. And so I love that concept. I mean, that's help people sort of grow and get more and have more. So I just love everything about your
It's
vibe.
empowerment
And
too, right? Because
yeah.
when we can do something for ourselves, we feel stronger, we feel better, we feel motivated, and we feel powerful. And we all
Mhm,
are powerful, right?
Mm.
mhm,
Everything, and again, another cliche, everything that we need is inside of us. It is. All these memories, all these emotions, all these things. And yes, in my hidden emotion work, unconscious shadow, I put it in an organized way to help people conceptualize and bring all the pieces of the puzzle together. But
mhm.
it's really that person. It's all of them. It really, I'm just the medium, if you will, bringing that information, you know, to the forefront, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now I know you can probably only deal with one person at a time, and obviously, reaching one person at a time, it's kind of difficult. But when you're able to, if the person is open for it, to take that and hopefully move on and teach it to one or two other people or three other people
Yeah,
or
I,
whatever it
I should
is.
speak to the rest of as well, because hidden emotion, unconscious shadow is my modality as a counseling therapist. However, I have lots of different skills. I've worked in the field of anger management and domestic violence. So I have done groups for those types of things with both the courts, and I am like an approved therapist for victim services with the police. So that's why I said I live a bit in the 3D world, but I also travel to multi-dimensional worlds where I find the healing work works faster. I know, certain facets of or schools of therapy are not quite caught up to where all of us light workers are in terms of our conceptualization and understanding of modalities that can move you along a little bit faster. But we're getting there. I've noticed some openings, so that's exciting.
Well, you bring up a really great point, because I feel like we are all the pioneers for the 5D world, for this new earth, and like we're here for a reason. And I mean, what better are we to be kind of like 1 foot here, 1 foot there, to kind of straddling the
Correct.
fence, and we're like trying to integrate both worlds together, so that there can be an easy transition, right? Why,
I have
so that there.
goosebumps and energy just flowing through my body. So that's the goal. You spoke about goals before we got started, and
Yeah,
that is a goal, right?
yeah,
For us to bring those two worlds together,
yeah, for sure.
because there is a lot of separation at this time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
And a
we've
lot of
seen
people
that
just
through
don't
COVID.
know. Right. They just don't know that they're healers. There's so many healers and they just don't know because they haven't tapped into it. Right. A
Right.
lot of empaths, and you can see like how they get so depressed, and it's like, oh, honey, like you're a healer.
Right.
That's why you're so sad all the time. You're taking on everything. Like, give it back,
And that is so important for people to hear, because, I spent a lot of my younger years after my dad suicided thinking that I had mental health problems.
Yeah.
Really, I was just picking up energy from other people. Like I would walk into the store and the cashier would be mad and having like an angry day. And for some reason, that energy, would like kind of like really sit with me and affect me. And, but I didn't know the release work. I didn't know how to process that, how to understand what was mine and what's not mine. And so that's part of my work too, is helping people to know what's theirs and what isn't, and what they sort of have to release. And my favorite thing, a lot of people, say they want to return energy to people, return to sender. And I always say, I return your energy to you with the hope for healing. So that is my,
Nice.
And because I want all of us to heal, because
Yeah.
a concept that not everybody understands is that when one of us heals, we all heal. When a woman heals in her family, she heals the members around her, she heals her neighbors, she heals her friends, and we all expand and we all raise our vibration. And I know that's a little bit of a hard concept to understand if you're a little bit more in the 3D world, but the reality is, if you think about it, your behaviors start to improve. You're modeling those for somebody else. If we're talking about it in a 3D form rather than, more spiritually, people are seeing the way that we interact. People are, saying, hey, I kind of want to be like that. Like, that's what I teach in my anger management courses that I've done in the past. I'm like, who have you seen that's really good at managing their emotions or their angers? Who are they? What did they do? What did you see them? What were their behaviors? What were their, practices? What did you observe? Right. And that's the starting point of saying, that's who I want to be. Right.
Yeah.
And we're all entitled to be who we want to be and deal with things in that fashion. Right. But when we heal, other people see it and if they're not ready to heal, that can be a trigger. But if they are leaning towards that, that can be planting a seed. That can be a really good model or a starting point.
Yeah. Yeah. And you brought up a good point before with like the things I post on like social media, things like that. I always try to post positive things so that you never know who needs to hear it, right? Somebody needs to read that, and it may not be anything that I'm going through, but someone else is going through that, and they need to have.
I have resonated with so many of your posts on a deep level.
Yeah.
I kind of go both ways. I tend to post out very positive things, but also very honest things, very experiential things, because I want people to know that showing up as your authentic self, showing up as the real you, will invite others who resonate with your energy, your soul family, if you may, to gravitate towards you. And so being your authentic self is the most sure way to ensure that you're on the right path with the right people, the right opportunities. And I say, I had a real struggle with loss due to my dad's suicide. And it took me a long time to learn that if it falls away, let it fall. Right.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, Rebecca, we've taken the whole show.
Well, I was thinking about this all day. Louise Hay, of course, you know who she is. Well, she had this little technique that I used one time for a few weeks, and it worked so amazingly for me. She said, if you look in the mirror and you look into your eyes and you say to yourself every morning, I love you. I really, really love you. And then you do some affirmations like, I am super successful. I am powerful. I am whatever you want to say. Well, I did it because I wanted to land a particular job in Boston. And I got the job, and it was a great job as long as I did it. So I have a friend who just started teaching middle school to young people that come from difficult families and backgrounds. And and he tells me that, he has them take time out and spend like 5 minutes meditating, but not really telling them they're meditating, just tells them to chill. Well, I started thinking, if they each had a mirror and they looked in it and said, I love you, I really love you.
I've done that exercise.
Wouldn't that be cool if kids started doing that?
Yeah.
To empower themselves? Yeah. Because like Louise said, and I found this to be true too, it's really hard initially to look in your eyes and say, I love you without feeling kind of weird.
Yeah.
But then you get used to it. And you start to realize you're your best friend.
There's ways to approach that, with not necessarily the words I love you, but when I worked with kids in the school division, I was a guidance counselor, student services. And so what I would do with kids is when they finish their work, like saying something they really liked or something that was really nice about their work or about themselves or about, in a lot of the social skills. So that premise does definitely work. And what's resonating for me is a commercial I saw, and I don't know what it was for, but it was a commercial quite a while ago. And there was this woman, and she was talking to her friend, and she said, you've really gained a lot of weight. You're really fat, and you're also quite ugly. And she's saying all of these things while people are listening, right? In this restaurant. And they're like, oh my God, like, how could you say that to your friend? And the commercial basically ends. You wouldn't talk to your friend like that. So why do you talk to yourself like that? And that was so powerful for me, because we often do that. We look and, we see a wrinkle and we're like, oh, I'm so terrible. Like, I'm old looking. I'm this, I'm that. And, our bodies, again, and our brains are so intelligent. I'm itchy on my neck right now. So my brain tells me to scratch my neck, right?
Yeah.
So, when I tell my brain that I'm ugly, then my brain tells me to feel bad about that, because ugly is not acceptable in our very vain society. So then I start feeling bad about myself. And so all these little neural pathways and ideas and thoughts are really so powerful. And I think, if we really knew how our own toxicity, I'm going to call it, was affecting ourselves, we'd be a lot softer and kinder with ourselves, because it really does. It really does affect us, and in all facets. Just like you said, you had that interview and you nailed it. You had been giving yourself those positive affirmations and compliments and things, and you felt it. And you went in there and you had the confidence.
So powerful. I didn't even have to interview. They just offered it to me. It were, I think you can empower yourself to a point through your vibration just attracts the best.
Yeah, and you're right. And it's reminding me of talking to a client yesterday. I was working with a client in one of my hidden emotion sessions, and she wasn't getting very good feedback from something she was, doing, and she said, I'm really scared. She had this like terrified feeling inside her. And we obviously worked through to release that, change the narrative, all that kind of stuff. But when we were conceptualizing and talking about it, I said, how do you feel when there's a scared little animal and you go to pet it and it's very clear that that animal is extremely scared? How do you feel? And she goes, I feel scared too. And so I said, sometimes we are creating this energy around us that, expands, and then people can't help but also feel fearful around us. So then they're like, is this the right place for this person? Should this person be doing this? Because our energy sort of tells that person that we're so fearful. And then even if they're not a very highly spiritual person, we all feel energy of other people. We can all tell when something's off. And so that starts to create this ball of energy that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And that's why we have to have the skills to regulate that and bring that ball smaller. So even if it exists, we can accept that fear without judgment, and we can process it.
But you know what I'd like you to address, because I know all of us here experience this now that we're living in this 5D, 3D world more and more. We light workers can be very, very positive people and very honest and authentic, but that can repel people in these times.
Yeah.
How do you address that? I mean, it's a very interesting phenomenon to me, the way people are being divided.
And I can actually speak to a client again yesterday, obviously without naming names, but she actually disappeared and ghosted me about 6 months ago. And she came back to me with the realization that she said, your honesty and your openness was like very daunting for me. Like I'm not there yet. Like I'm not comfortable with myself. So she said it was a trigger for me that you can show up so authentically. And the reality is we can't change that for people. They have to be in their own personal readiness. And sometimes that takes somebody leaving and then circulating back. And she came back to me and we did the work yesterday, and it was an amazing session. And she was so apologetic. And I said, this is what needed to happen. This is part of my little bird's so excited. This is part of the process, right? He's like, he feels the energy. That's the thing too, right? Just like human beings, animals, they feel the energy. He feels me getting pumped up right now. And he's like, I'm pumped up too. And I want everybody to hear me.
Right.
Awesome.
So, you know, it's difficult. And as healers, we really want everybody to be ready and start healing and all of those kind of things. And sometimes we just have to say that person's not there yet. They have a few different steps in their journey and they're going to have to, you know, separate for a while. And that's the same with our personal relationships and, you know, all sorts of things. Sometimes we're not, you know, in the same place anymore. And sometimes that can circle back at a later date. And we just have to have that process of letting go, right? And allowing everybody to move down their path and their journey at their own pace. And what's intended will be.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest lessons we have to learn as light workers and healers is letting people come to you when they're ready, because we're like, you're so ready, call us. I mean, we can do all this stuff because we can see it before they can. And they're like, I'm not ready. It's like, oh,
right. And
what
she
do you mean you're not
disappeared.
ready?
She disappeared.
Yeah.
Like completely. And she goes, I felt horrible about it. I felt like so bad because we were actually like in a group setting together, like in another, you know, whatever. And so we had built a rapport and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, I felt so terrible because she's like, I know you have past issues with loss. And I said, you know, it really just gave me the opportunity to examine that again and look how far I've come and seen where I'm at and the parts and wounds that I'm still healing. Because I said to her, it's not as if you left and I didn't notice. You were an important person in my path, you know, supporting me during a time in my life. And I really, you know, valued you. And so when you did disappear like that, I felt it, you know, but I was also able to see it as the gift that it was for me to sort of, you know, look at all of those pieces of myself that have been healed and those that still needs some work. Right. And, you know, I said it wasn't, and she said, you know, you're so good with this. And I said, well, I could tell you there was a process to get there. I said, I saw your picture on Facebook the one day and I felt angry. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I said, I felt angry. And I thought, where is that anger coming from? I got curious about that anger, right? And I'm like, there's still, you know, part of me that feels unvalued when somebody disappears, right? And that's okay. We need to accept those parts of ourselves. So that's a good example of a shadow. That's a good example of a shadow part of ourselves that we have to say, it's okay. Human beings were made with anger for a reason, to share us what isn't feeling good for us and what is, you know, our bodies are set up with protections. But the biggest problem I find is that our bodies, like our brains as human beings, we're set up for connection, but with all the trauma and wounds that we experience, then we're putting ourselves in a position of protection where we really have our guard up and then we're protecting ourselves, right? And so then we, you know, kind of limit ourselves from certain experiences because we're like, oh no, that's going to happen again. And that's okay. If it happens again, we're repeating that process to learn from it. And if we're feeling those reactions, those judgments, those stronger emotions, that's just a key to say, hey, here's an area that needs a little bit more attention and love and acceptance, right? Not like, oh shit, I'm still got this, you know, anger and hurt from loss. I'm a terrible person. Why can't I get past this? No, it's more like, okay, I'm a human being and this person was valuable to me and they just disappeared and that hurt. I'm feeling hurt. And that anger comes from a place of hurt that's very internal, that's still connected to, you know, a wound of somebody I lost many years ago that also hurt me by leaving, right? And so we recognize it, we accept it, we give it, you know, that non-judgment, and we say, I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress, you know? I'm a beautiful creation. I'm not done painting, right?
Wonderful, wonderful. So if you could leave us with one last thing, what would be what's your biggest goal? Like, we all have goals, but what's that the big picture?
I think you actually hit the nail on the head, which doesn't surprise me because of your own intuitiveness and giftings, but to be able to bring that 3D world and that multidimensional, fifth dimensional world together, bridge those gaps so that we can be both in our masculine and feminine energies, that we can be balanced, that we can straddle that fence, right? And so that we might not, change some of the boxes and different societal things like government and bigger structures like religion and government, like we're shifting, but some of those will in our lifetime anyways remain, but moving more and more to kind of pulling all of that as one, like wholeness, right? And so one of the things I explain too, when people ask me, do you believe in God? And I said, well, I believe in a higher power, a higher consciousness. And the more we grow and heal and learn, I feel like we're accessing that higher consciousness, that higher connection. And I believe we all are God. We all have the answers, the information, the creativity, just the beauty all inside us. Like we are all divine, right? And so when we can be our most authentic, healed selves and be in that wholeness, we can create like nobody else's business. None of our skills are the same. We are all different, beautiful human beings, all here to do separate things. But a lot of the messaging and programs we've been given keep us limited. And so the more we can learn about ourselves, the more we can grow, the more that we can be authentic, the more we can pull all those worlds together, the more all of us will be doing what we're intended to be doing here. And we will live in a more beautiful, empowered, creative, dynamic, expressive world, right? That's the goal. It's a huge one.
Well, that's kind of how things happen around here. We have major, huge goals. So we're here to support you. And we just thank you so much for being here. I love your goal. I love your vision. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, to work with you, where would you want them to find you first?
You know what? I go by James Blonde on Facebook. That's just a little bit of a joke because I am living in the 3D world and the fifth dimensional, and I don't necessarily want my anger management clients finding me on Facebook. So it's just a little bit of a, joke, James Blonde instead of James Bond. So some people ask me, what's that all about? And I just said, well, certain people will search for me, and Ashley Nate is on Facebook, but she doesn't have any friends. So unfortunately, so you can reach out to me directly and on James Blonde. I also have my group, The Conscious Counselor, which is where you can receive a lot of different posts that are uplifting and that will kind of be in the vibration of this healing energy we were discussing today. The umbrella is called The Neighborhood in honor of my dad because my last name is Nay. So it's welcome to the neighborhood. I am happy to do collaborations with other people. I'm doing one this Friday, and all of those collaborations and Friday night feels and Saturday night lives, plural. I'm not going to get Saturday Night Live calling me, right. Saying I stole their name, lives, plural. So I work with a lot of different healing professionals and other people kind of in a similar way that we're having this dialogue today. They come and share what they're doing and that sort of thing too within that space. So all of you are, of course, welcome to, come into the Free Spirit group and be free with your spirit and share what you have to share. Yeah. So that's an invitation to all of you and anybody who's listening to reach out and, also share their gifts with that space. And I do test the energy of everybody that I bring into that space because I want a really positive space and that sort of thing. But I'm happy to reach out and work with, everyone. The only requirement to get any of my groups is an openness in your heart and your mind to heal and to expand as a person. And so if somebody's not quite there yet, that might be the reason why I decline temporarily. But of course, we are always ever changing. So, that it always ends up being an open door at some point in time. But I do maintain a space that's very non-judgmental and very healthy for people to feel safe and supported in a community. So that's the Free Spirit space.
Well, I love that. And I thank you for the invitation. I don't know if I'm there yet. I could be, I'm not sure. I think I might be in your little group.
You're in that group. You're in the free
Okay.
spirit group, but I don't
Okay.
think you're in my conscious counselor group.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, I've seen you come up in the one, but not the other. So I'm pretty
Okay.
sure that's the case.
probably
And
not.
then, like I said, the umbrella of everything is the neighborhood. So when I say everybody's welcome in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
that's to come to the free spirit, to do like a live similar like this. Anybody's welcome to share their gifts. We're all at different spaces. Some people in the group may not be ready to do the deeper emotional work with me, but there might be somebody else that they connect with that's at a different space as well. And so it's all about connecting the right people with where they're at in their journey, right? And so that's another one of the goals, is just connecting people with the next space on their path that is most authentic with themselves, right? So they can get what they need to move.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I thank you again for being here with us today and taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us. We'll post your links in the description when Pamela gets back, because she's like the expert at that. I'll forward all your information to her, and then she'll post it in this. When this is all done, I'll send you the link when it's all completed. And then you can always, go onto Lightworkers Secrets to Success and also look for it there as well. But I just want to say thank you guys so much again for being here with us today and listening to all the wonderful things that Ashley's doing. If you haven't did so before, please like and subscribe our YouTube channel. Please share this information with others so that they can also have some beacons of light in their life as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of you and your time and allowing me to be here to share this and to hopefully plant some seeds. I really appreciate your invite, and your invite not only came before the summer, but also after the summer. And I thank you so much for being so diligent and loving to give that invite on more than one occasion.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you very much.
Yes.